Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Daffy's Roundtable. Today, I'm joined by Avery of Skinks Inc. to talk all about fire skinks. Now, I thought that this was a super boring, super shy species that was like a pet dirt box that never came out and was super skittish, and turns out I was very wrong. Turns out they're a super social species. Turns out there's morphs. Turns out they are captive bred. There's a lot of very, very interesting information in this episode, and I think you are going to enjoy it whether you're a fire skin keeper or you're not. Which by the end of this episode, you might want to be a fire skin keeper. Also, let me give a quick shout out to Bree from Bree's Exotics for actually setting up this interview, introducing me to Avery, and making this happen. And also, as always, a quick shout out and thank you to Exoterra for sponsoring this podcast and making this episode possible. Exoterra makes quality products for our pet reptiles to make them feel at home. Finally, one more, and then I'm done. We can get into the episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, or any of the other streaming platforms, please give us a follow. It really helps the podcast out, and I really appreciate it. Okay, without further ado, let's dive into the fascinating world of fire skinks, which I did not know were fascinating until now. Everybody, please help me welcome Avery of Skinks Inc. Avery, hello.
How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm very excited to talk about the cool projects you have on the go. And yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Yeah, excited to talk about reptiles?
Always.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into it. What before we kind of dive into your awesome projects, how did you get started in reptile keeping?
I got started in reptile keeping when I was really young. I'm the only person in my family that had any interest in it, so it started with catching lizards in the backyard. And it kind of evolved. I got a blue-tongued skink when I was like 13, and then I fell in love with other species, in particular fire skinks, which is what we're going to talk about today, mostly. But yeah.
Awesome. And then other than fire skinks, which you're right, that is exactly what we're here to talk about. But other than fire skinks, you also keep hog noses, I believe. Is there anything else that you're currently keeping?
I do. I keep hog noses, hunter and milk snakes. I have some ball pythons. I have crested geckos. I have a Vietnamese blue beauty, Chinese cave rat. I keep a little bit of everything because I take in like weird or rescue animals sometimes, and so it just creates a zoo, I think. But the most of the species are hog noses or the skinks for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I absolutely know how it is. You take one animal from this person, one animal for this person, and suddenly you're like, I
Yeah.
have no space in the room. Time to start a new room.
Uh-huh. Sincerely, somebody with 3 rooms dedicated to reptiles.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. That's awesome. So the room you're in right now is just fire skinks then?
Mostly, this is fire skinks and hog noses. So I practice pretty strict biosecurity. This is my main collection room. So a lot of the animals in here are clean, quarantined, you name it. They've gone through the ringer of tests before they end up in here because my babies are behind me. There's no wild caught animals in this room. I actually have a second room that's all quarantined, and that's like on itself. But yeah.
That's awesome. And then so you mentioned blue tongue skink at 13, and then how long after that did you start keeping fire skinks?
About 6 months later.
Oh, okay. It was a quick jump. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, so I got my first skink being Tofu, my bluey, and I still have him. He's almost 10 now. And shortly after that, I got Taz when he was like 5, I think, at the time. And Taz has been with me that entire time. And one of the misconceptions I hear is like fire skinks don't live long. He just turned 15. So I'm not sure how much longer he'll go because there isn't enough research about captive animals, but I anticipate him living into his 20s, hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And that's your first fire skink, sorry?
First ever, yeah. He's the guy that started it all for me. He's the one that kind of broke everything that I knew about them as a species and what really got me going as far as like wanting to breed them and wanting to work with the species. Because fire skinks, in my opinion, are one of the best pet reptiles. Pardon my French. They are fantastic. They are a great beginner species. They are really inquisitive. They're highly, highly intelligent. They are the most intelligent lizard species that I have worked with personally in like over a decade of reptile keeping outside of monitors. They are so freaking smart, and to the point where they know their names, they're tap trained, they come running, and there's a lot of people that think they're really shy. And honestly, when you're working with CBB specifically, they get so used to me from me working with them every day and raising babies from hatchlings. They recognize your voice, they recognize you when you come in the room, and like when they're comfortable with you, you know it, because I'm gonna have one jump on me here in a little bit.
That's so awesome. I had no idea. That's actually one of the questions I had to ask you was, every time I've seen them, they're burrowed completely under the substrate. It's like, you're like, oh yeah, there's this fire skink in there, but we never see him, that kind of thing. But you're saying they're tap trained, like they'll come out to you?
Yeah, always. I have some where, I just tap at the top at the front, and I'll call them over and they'll run right up on my arm, hang out on my shoulder. And these are again all I can't stress this enough. These are all CBB individuals. When you're I compare fire skinks a lot to any wild animal. If you take any wild animal out of the wild, it's not going to be domesticated. If
100%.
you go outside and catch a feral raccoon and put it in your house, it's not going to be your best friend.
It's still a
Okay,
feral raccoon. Yes.
it's still a feral raccoon. Okay,
Yes.
so unfortunately, the stigma that surrounds fire skinks was largely in part to the fact that they were just super, super wild caught. Like everything came in parasite ridden, really scared of people, and it's a testament to their intelligence too, because when you have like dumber reptiles, I find to be the better pets because they're just like, yeah, sure, eat me, whereas fire skink, they're smart, and we're a big monkey, trying to grab them, and they're not too keen on that. So it I can't stress, like, and we'll talk about it later too when we get into like captive breeding, but I really want to push efforts for people to keep breeding the species, because I think the more people that breed CBB, the more popular they're going to be. Because it just, again, when it comes down to it, it's just breeding CBB needs to be the goal, I guess.
Gold. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know how it is down in the States, but we rarely ever see them up here in Canada. And when we do, to my knowledge, they're mostly wild caught. Is that still also the case at US Expos?
Yeah, it's 99% of them. It is extraordinarily difficult to find them not wild caught, and unfortunately, Togo fire skinks in particular have the populate. One of the bigger reasons too to breed them is because Togos can't really be imported anymore. There's war and things that are going on in the area, and their native range has been decimated. Like the amount of people that have told me, like importers that are like, we can't even find them anymore. And so what we're seeing a lot of is Cameroons, and Cameroons tend to crash really fast in captivity. They don't do as well, just from my personal experience. And they're from a more southern locality. They tend to be more stressed. They're harder to breed. And unfortunately, they start to crash. And about 60% of wild caught fire skinks will die within the first year. And so that's just another reason why I'm glad that I'm here to talk about them, really.
Stuff already. So I thought it was just African fire skink. Now you're saying there's Togo, there's Cameroon. Are there other localities they're coming from?
There's six. Yeah, there's six different. No, there's six different recognized localities. There's Togo, Cameroon, Southern, Western, Eastern, and Togo's kind of go into that center. There's no real like central, I guess, but there's different recognized localities. And me and a close friend of mine, Richard Valdez, who is great to talk to as well. He's my partner in crime when it comes to breeding the fire skinks. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have morphs at all. But he, what was I saying? He helped me, we started seeing differences in wild caught animals, and we started realizing they were captured from different areas. When we looked further into it, they're very genetically different. So there are actual like localities from these other sections, and they look pretty different too. I don't have much examples right now. I'd have to dig for them, but it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fascinating. I had no idea. So are you only keeping, I assume it's frowned upon to breed different locales together? Are you only keeping one locale? Yeah, could you kind of break that down for us?
So the morphs that we see in captivity are predominantly Togos. That's were the most that were being imported. They were the most they were the most populous, I guess. And because they're found in the same native range of African fat-tailed geckos, Schneider skinks, things like that, that were not Schneiders, sandfish and like Peter's bandeds and stuff. They were all being kind of imported at the same time. And so it was just easier to grab Togos, So all of these ones that were getting imported were from the same range. And it wasn't until much later that we discovered these localities. Cameroons look pretty strikingly different from Togos. I keep both Cameroon and Togo, and I have interbred them, and it was to see if the babies were stronger because I had to breed. I bred Cameroons and all the babies crashed immediately. But then when I bred my Cameroon male to a Togo female, babies are still doing great and thriving. And so I don't really know. I'm trying to figure that out. So as of right now, I don't think it's super frowned upon because they're so widely imported. There isn't really muddied lines. If anything, I'm the only one muddying them. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but there is a good point that you make there of like maybe you're muddying them a little bit, but maybe you're strengthening the genetics or whatever the right word there is. So you said and that's so far what you're seeing to be true. Like you're seeing stronger
Yeah.
babies.
Yeah, I talked about this privately, but I actually haven't really talked about it publicly yet. But I was planning on making a post about Cameroon versus Togo and why I did intercross them. And so far, I've had more success with the outcrosses than I have with the individual Cameroons. I've had more Cameroon crashes than I have had Togos ever. Togos are way more hardy. And just for whatever reason, they just do a lot better crossed. So I'm still figuring it out. There's a lot of genetic testing that I want to do, but it's just there's no one to really my population is small, so I have to do a lot of this stuff on my own.
So cool. So I have a bunch of questions written down. I haven't touched them yet because now I'm just like, okay, tell me more. Okay, so that's very interesting. Is there anybody else in captivity keeping any of the other locales? You said there's 6. Is there anybody else keeping the other 4?
No, because they're illegal. So a lot of the ones have been marked as CITES, even if they aren't. It's really hard because they're in areas of Africa where it is illegal to import, or it's near impossible to find them because there's only been a handful even documented. These are ones where I've only gotten pictures from people that from trappers in Ghana and stuff that have sent me pictures of these individuals. So I don't really know how much how much of them even are there and how much it's worth taking them out of the wild to try to work with them. Because I don't, it's too much of a risk, and I don't think there's just enough people to get their hands on them really when there's only been a few ever seen or documented at all.
Makes sense. Is one locale larger than the other? Is there a size difference between them?
Togos are the biggest by far. Togos get up to 15 inches long. So they're nose to tail tip, about that long. The smallest being, I think the Westerns, the specific name is different from Fernandi. It starts with a C. I can't remember it right now, but they're this big. They're they've got these short little tails, but they're bright red with these big blocky heads. Again, I'll try to find some pictures, but they're old because they're from the early 2000s. But yeah, I don't know too much about the others. Cameroons have longer tails. That's the one thing. Cameroons are almost as big as Togos, but body for body size, Togos are a lot just beefier, whereas Cameroons are more slender and they've got much longer tails. Cameroon tails are almost as long as a Togo's whole body.
Interesting. They're interesting. And can you so I guess you could tell by the tail, but if I was to put a Togo and a Cameroon in front of you, can you visually tell?
Yeah, 100%. I can tell by their neck pattern alone. You could literally just show me its face and I'd know which one was which.
Interesting. Okay. Very cool. How many generations in are you? Because you say CBB, captive born and bred. So I assume you're more than a generation in?
On generation 5 now, I think.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've been breeding them since 2018. So, albeit on a smaller scale, and again, largely partnered with Richard Valdez, who's Desi's Skinks. As far as I know, outside of me and him, there's really not many people breeding fire skinks consistently in captivity at all. That's why, like, I want to shout him out as much as possible if I can, because he has some of the nicest extreme reds I've ever seen in my life. He breeds like solid red fire skinks, and I'm jealous.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was gonna say like, but they all have some form of red in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I've had some that are more red. I've had some that have like more black. I've had some that are red and white. There is a lot of variation, but your standard normal, I guess, is going to be like four colors. It's going to be gold, red, black, and white. The black and white bands kind of side the red. So you've got red and then black and white and then red and then black and white, and they've got a gold like stripe down their back.
Interesting.
They're
Okay,
pretty cool.
maybe let's. Yeah, yeah. Well, for also to comment on that, yeah, shout him out as much as you want. I'll even like pop his Instagram link or whatever in the description, so everyone go check him out as well. And check out Avery's Instagram as well, of course. But before we get more into it, because now I'm like thinking of all these other questions, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Um, how do you? What's your? You bring a fire skink home. What's your setup look like? I assume Africa so hot, but well, like you can never assume based on like the region, but I assume hot and dry, but I don't think that's true. So could you kind of break that down for us?
So these guys are actually humid loving species. They come from more tropical regions. They are found in grasslands a little bit. So their soil is predominantly clay, leaf litter, things like that. If you wanted to keep it as natural as possible, I do clay, sand, and a cocoa coir of some kind, leaf litter. They really thrive in a more humid substrate, but their ambient humidity does not need to be nearly as high. They like to spend a lot of their time in like these marshy areas. Although they're terrible swimmers, they don't swim or hunt for fish. They just like to hang out for like bugs and worms and stuff like that. So when I take fire skink home outside of quarantine, they go in a mixture of cocoa coir, coconut husk, sphagnum moss, sometimes a little bit of sand, and I throw on leaf litter, isopods, cork bark. I deck out their bins. They're in bins, but they're not in bare bins. They get leaf litter. I set them up in a more shallow water bowl for babies because they will drown. You got to be careful. They're again little legs, very bad swimmers. But outside of that, their substrate humidity is like 60%. Your ambient's gonna be, 40 to, well, you can have like 90% spikes. They do have a dry and a rainy season. We could talk about that when we get to the breeding section of things. But they're very simple. Outside of like just, the one thing that I can't stress enough is because they are a prey species, you want to set them up in an enclosure that has a lot of coverage. They need to have like a lot of clutter to feel really comfortable, especially when you first bring a skink home. Because I've had the question of, oh, should I take its hide out because it's hiding all the time? I'm like, don't do that. It's hiding because it's scared. But once they get more comfortable and stuff, it's a different story. But coverage and just like a little bit in the humid substrate and stuff is the real goal. But there's nothing really super specific. Their hotspot's 92 degrees, 92 to 95. And so it's just maintaining that humidity in the substrate, and you're pretty much good.
That's awesome. And you have them set up in a rack. Is it like back heat, and that's the hot end of the tub, and then the other side is more of a cooler end?
Yeah, yeah. So they've got a heat gradient. So these are big 55s because these are my juveniles, but I have all my adults in B70s. So it's roughly the same base dimensions of a 40-gallon. It's just not as high. These guys aren't climbers. They're very much a burrowing species. They're not going to be. They'll try to climb things, but poorly. So generally speaking, my skinks are a lot more comfortable. So I've found in the rack system, I've used 40s. Again, I've experimented with everything over the years, and this is just seems to be what works best as far as like not only space but comfortability. My skinks are really, really active, and I see them every day. Like every single day I walk in here and all of them are out. So they tend to really like it. But you do want to provide adequate space. They need probably the minimum of what would be like a 20-gallon, but I try to do 40 for their base if I can.
Yeah, and I know we touched on this a little bit in the beginning, and the I guess misconception or the common thought on them is that they're a very shy species. They're burrowing. Do you give them that burrow room? Do they
Yeah,
use it?
yeah,
Like, are
all
they okay?
Yeah, they get 2 to 3 inches of substrate in the bins. I can't go too heavy because they're PVC racks, but um they will use as much of it as you want to give them. I've seen people give them 9, 10 inches of substrate, and they will make elaborate tunnel systems and everything. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to see them all the time. These are animals that, when you have taken the chance to socialize with them and get them used to you, they're highly intelligent, and they will start to come up to you for food. They'll want to come up to you just to hang out because you're warm. These are animals that make fantastic pets, and I don't think that, like, by any means they're pet dirt at all. It's just about how, you know, I guess what you start with too. Even if you get a wild caught skink, some of them do tame down pretty well.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then do you have to consider when you're putting in the substrate, like your substrate mix, does that hold burrows? Are they creating burrows and reusing them?
Yeah, all the time. They love it. So that's why I use coco coir in the mix that I do, because it does tend to really, especially if you're keeping it humid, it tends to hold these like burrow holes, and I'll see them kind of pop their head out of whatever hole they've made, and it's really fun to see them kind of reusing these burrows. And it's something that they do naturally all the time. They'll live in like big colonies, and you'll lift up a log in the wild, and there'll be 30 of them under there, just all kind of hanging out.
30 of them. Are they a communal species?
I liked to believe that, but I think it's more for resources. I think just some of them will congregate over, wherever the most food is, and then they'll kind of scatter and go on their own way. I found that in captivity, personally, I don't recommend keeping them together because females can get real violent with one another. I actually had a female that decapitated a male she was with, that was a little smaller than her. So ever since that happened, I was just like, proceed with caution. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll do it all the time. I know plenty of people that I've kept pairs together for a decade plus, and they're doing great. But just for me, as if I'm talking to a beginner, I just say start with one, and then sometimes breeding pairs can live together happily, and not necessarily bond, but they will tolerate each other, especially if there's like ample food and stuff. Generally speaking, I'd say keep them separately. I keep all of mine separately, except for babies. I keep babies together for the first like 4 months of their life. I have tried separating them, but they just do a lot better in groups because they learn from one another where the food is and stuff.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Obviously there's a lot of misconceptions about them as we're discovering. Is there any like a big mistake that you're constantly seeing people make in regarding the enclosure that you want to kind of clear up?
Water dishes. Guys, stop giving them gallon water dishes. Like the first CBB Anery Fire Skinks in existence, there was about 6 of them. Somebody bought 4 of the 6. Not from me, but from my friend. And shortly after, they found them all drowned and dead in about a 1-gallon water dish, because they had seen somebody keeping their fire skink in a paludarium. And fire skinks are not good swimmers. Don't soak your skink in anything over like a 1/4 inch of water. They will literally put their head down in it and drown. They are not good. They are not water dwelling species. They can't swim well at all. If they swim, it's out of actual like absolute necessity, and most of them don't know how. So that's the biggest one. With like raising babies, I literally like that much water in the bowl. It's like less than 1/4 inch. And I change it every single day. But that's the big mistake. That's the number one. And then co-housing random skinks, not quarantining. Quarantine is super important, especially when you're getting wild caught skinks. Cameroon fire skinks have been testing positive for crypto because they're coming in with African fat tail geckos. And the last thing you need is to get a random wild caught Cameroon and it have crypto. So just quarantine, biosecurity, no 1-gallon water dishes. But other than that, they're almost foolproof. They're a very easy species to keep, at least in my opinion.
Makes sense. What about diet? I've never kept them. But my assumption, again, I'm making some of these like common assumptions for you. My assumption is they're completely insectivores, or are they more towards like a blue tongue skink diet? I'll let you take it.
So so they actually are omnivorous. Funny enough, they are primarily insectivores. I give mine a varied diet. They mostly eat dubias, superworms, waxoliferae larvae. I'll give them waxworms. They despise hornworms. Don't even try. I don't know what it is about them. But they just don't like hornworms. But they will eat chicken eggs, quail eggs, dog food, ground turkey, ground chicken. I've offered them fresh pet. You can mix in greens if you want to mix in greens. They will eat plants. They do kind of lean towards that blue tongue skink diet. They can't really process fruit that well, so I don't really recommend it. But they do love banana as a treat for whatever reason. So sometimes on their birthdays, I'll give them banana, as if they know it's their birthday, but it's for me. Anyway, but generally speaking, they can, I mean, I've seen them literally be fed like blueies and live fine like that forever with no like problems. As long as they're supplemented and being fed like a good variety, like they're pretty straightforward. They can just straight up eat the same diet as a bluey.
Have you ever tried the Repashy Bluey buffet?
I don't like the Repashy Blue Buffet just because it's full of fillers, and I've just heard too many cases of like skinks ending up with kidney problems and like stones and problems with their intestines from it. So generally speaking, I don't recommend it. What I do like is like you can get like can of snails, like the canned snails. Fire skinks in the wild actually eat a lot of snails. And the only reason we knew this was because when I was first importing my first wild caught skinks, I had them all go to, I live local to Tufts University. And so they all got tested and they kept coming back positive for nematodes. And nematodes are benign in fire skinks. They live for a couple weeks in their system and then they poop them out and they don't affect them at all. And they were like, man, where are these nematodes coming from? And then I had some start pooping out snail shells. And I was like, oh my God. And so we realized that snails, and it was all of them had tested positive. So they're coming from an area where they're eating a lot of snails. And they tend to, and I've tried them in the wild. I used to breed mystery snails to feed my skinks and they love them. So I definitely think that's also a large part of the wild diet, although I haven't, seen them in the wild. So I can't really. But just from what I know, from what I had tested early on, it seems as though they do eat a lot of snails.
Interesting. And you mentioned there you imported some wild caught ones. Was this after you kind of started and you were looking for fresh blood, or were you looking for some specific more like why did you import a fresh batch?
So, fire skinks, a little bit of a history about how I even got into breeding fire skinks, who I think this is kind of all ties in together. When I first got Taz, I decided Taz was my first fire skink. I got him when I was 13 and a half. From a random reptile shop for $20. They told me he was 5 years old and I just rolled with it. He's now 14, and going on 15 in November based on the date that they told me. And I used to call everybody and be like, hey, how do you breed fire skinks? Google, like trying to figure this out. And I got laughed at. I called, I can't name names, but I called somebody that was their primary importer. And I said, hey, I want to figure out how to breed these. And I got, good luck, click, And I was determined. I was like, I'm going to figure this out one way or another. And I actually found a random fire skink Facebook group. And there was a guy by the name of Austin Burton who had bred some in captivity. And he wrote some of the first care guides on fire skinks. And from there, I was able to use his knowledge and combine it with what I had been learning from looking at wild caught animals. And that's when I started working with Rich to start producing the first fire skinks in captivity. He produced some of the first, morphs and stuff. Some of the first morphs were imported, and he got his hands on them first. And then I taught him how to breed them. And then we kind of went from there. And so there was nobody breeding them. I got told they're hard to breed. Don't even bother. They don't live long in captivity. They got labeled a throwaway species, pet dirt, you name it. They're pretty, but they suck as pets, And after having my own experience with them, I was like, you're wrong. You're wrong, because this skink that I have sitting in front of me right now, I'm like, hey Taz, come here, and he runs up and sits on my knee for 2 hours. Like I like tongue trained him, I tap trained him, to the point where like if you give them like a little sandy area, they will use it as a litter box. Like they are very, very smart. And it was just something where, I was just determined. But unfortunately, I had to get wild caught animals. There was no CBB. There literally no one. Even Austin, who wrote the first care guides that I largely based my own care guide off of, because I do have a full care sheet that I've been writing over the last 5 years. I where was I going with this? Anyway,
You had to import them because there was no captive bred. So if you wanted to breed them, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
No, that's all good. That makes sense. Also, if you want me to, we can pop that care sheet in the description as well, so people can
100%.
find it.
I'm always updating it, so it's just a link to my Google document. It's great because you can see in real time, and when I update it, I tend to post like on my story, like, hey, new update, I added this, and anytime somebody asks me a question, a lot of the time, if I haven't covered it on the care sheet, I freaking add it, so it has everything from like simple questions about like, well, what fruits can they eat, if they only get it as treat, and like I've added entire sections based off of just one conversation with somebody. And so I really try to keep it as current as I can. And I don't know if it'll ever be fully finished, I guess, but I would like to publish it eventually, because it's been a long time I've been working on this thing. So.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Okay, so maybe let's continue with that story, because that is an interesting story. So you imported them. Now you have your first group. You were told they're very hard to breed. How did you crack it and figure it out? And yeah, tell us a little more.
That's a story. So because I was a teenager, I was still in high school. Bless my mother's heart. I was ordering these animals. I was calling in my study hall, in my, I'd skip cafeteria. I'd be ordering skinks, talking to these importers, day in and day out. Mike Schultz specifically, huge shout out to him. He didn't find out that I was 14 until years later. But if it wasn't for those conversations, I wouldn't have these guys. So it's funny. But I got them in. And I started, figuring it out with them. I talked to Rich, I talked to Austin, I used all of this information. And then something that was big that I noticed is these animals are seasonal. They don't brumate. Fire skinks don't brumate. I swear to God, if one more person tells me they brumate, I'm going to freak out. They don't brumate. But fire skinks have a dry season, and I typically overwinter them. So I figured out that their ovulation period is heavily determined by how heavily I'm misting them in the spring. So as we kind of roll into fall, my girls start, this is their, the latest part of their breeding season is September, October, November. As it cools down, I start to dry them out, and I dry them out gradually over December into January into February. And I drop their humidity and their substrate down to like 20-30%. It gets low. I keep a water dish always. They're never dehydrated, but I kind of put them through this dry season where I bump their temps, and, I just dry them out a little bit. And then as we go into spring, I cool them down slightly, and then I kind of warm them back up. And then I just mist the crap out of them. I start hydrating the substrate. I start misting them every morning. I do substrate dumps, which is where I just like pour water into their substrate. And my girls ovulate within a couple of weeks. So that's how I trigger my ovulation with breeding them. And it's why I think people had trouble. And it was something that I realized because I was talking to somebody that bred Peter's banded skinks, and they talked about locust season and how the locusts were their trigger for breeding them. And I was like, that's really interesting. I wonder if the reason people are having problems with fire skinks is because of not because of a temperature change, but more so a weather condition. And sure enough, that part of Africa has rainy and dry seasons, and they breed all through that rainy season, and they'll continue to breed because after every ovulation cycle, they ovulate again. So they lay, and then there's a period of time in about a week where I give them a rest. They rebound really fast, by the way. They don't even look like they laid eggs. And then I'll pair them again, and they'll produce eggs. And they'll do that up to 2 to 3 times in a season, depending on if they retain sperm for the third pairing. And that'll be it for them. But they'll breed, 1 to 2 times every season. I get, 3 to 9 eggs a clutch, roughly. And then the cycle kind of repeats itself. I keep my girls really well fed during rainy season, because you have to imagine if it's really wet, there's going to be more bugs, more protein. Like I try to really mix up their diet, and during this time, make sure they're getting plenty of calcium and stuff like that. But generally speaking, it's nothing. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is, and I think it becomes intrinsic for me because it's something that I've done for so many years. But it really is something that's kind of simple. And if anything, I prefer it to brumation. I'm like, this is easy. I don't even have to spray you guys,
Yeah, that makes sense. Just a quick pause on the story. I have 2 questions. Can you visually tell the difference between a male and a female?
No, so here I do something called behavioral sexing, which is when I'm unsure of the sex of an animal by the time so I can sex babies pretty accurately by the time they're 6 months old. And I do this I separate my babies at the age of 4 months old. They get to like 4 or 5 months old. I separate them. They go into individual enclosures, and then from there, I raise them a couple months. And then I'm able to reintroduce individuals, and it's a pain. It's annoying. I get it. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I put them together, typically siblings, and I watch how they interact. Males will posture up, and they do this weird like tail wiggle thing. I need to post about it. This is like a key, like Avery, you need to videotape this. But anyway, males posture up in a way, and they kind of wiggle their tails to court females, and young males in particular are very brazen. And they'll go right after their siblings or whatever. And females squeak. Only females squeak. It's a weird submissive behavior, and they literally talk to each other. They'll wiggle their tail really fast, like, no, get away from me, and they squeak, and it literally sounds like somebody's squeaking like a dog toy. Like it's like a squeak, squeak, squeak sound. It's them forcing air out of their nostrils really fast. And you can even hear it when you pick up a female fire skink. You kind of hold her to your ear. You can hear it whistling. It's just, I think they're actually different biologically. Like they have, there has to be something that creates that whistle noise in their nose, but it's something I've only ever seen in females. So
Fascinating. Fascinating. Yeah, super cool. Not kind of cool. Super cool. And then do you separate your pairs as well and then repair them at a certain time of year? And then, how does that work?
So I keep my pairs separate all year round. I breed in I breed in this like empty bin. I'll just lay down some paper towel. I'll empty a bin. You can see one kind of there. But I will just lay down paper towel. I put the female in first. I grab a male. I make sure that I see a lock. I'll pair them anywhere from 1 to 7 times in their ovulation period. They only ovulate for like 2 weeks, so you got to get as many in as you can. I give them a day break in between, because males get tired. They're like, the females don't care, but the males are like, oh my God, again. So I'll do that over those 2 weeks, and then females will begin to ovulate. They do have a pre-lay shed, and then within 2 weeks after that pre-lay shed, you're looking at about 50 days from the start of ovulation to the time they lay eggs. Is about 50 days. The same thing goes for their incubation for the eggs. The eggs incubate from 40 to 50 days. So it's that same kind of range, actually.
Interesting. You might have mentioned this already. I'm not sure, but how do you, other than just time of year, is there like a visual cue that tells you the females are ovulating?
It's silly, but they come up to me. They all greet me at the front when I feed them, and what I'll do is I'll tickle the base of their tail, and females will lift their tail up like, oh, hey, and I'm like, oh, you're ovulating, and I chuck them in. It's something that I do around that time period where I'm starting to wet the substrate a lot. I'll check my females and I'll do that little tail test. And then more often than not, if they pass the tail test, they're ready to breed. And they'll be ovulating during that, again, like 2 to 3 week period is where you got to get it in. And then they will, have their like pre-lay shed and stuff. And yeah.
Cool. And then how hot are you incubating the eggs? How warm are you incubating the eggs?
They incubate at 81 to 83 degrees. I incubate at like 82. I've heard of people incubating as high as 84. That's like 27 degrees Celsius. And that's just what's worked for me. Any colder, any hotter, I haven't had any success. So that seems to be the sweet spot, really. It seems to be the sweet spot for a lot of these species that are from the same range, and more like temperate species. Like I know like Western hognoses incubate at the same like temperature range.
Yeah, I incubate my Pictus geckos, and I think maybe even the Stenodactyl. I'm trying to think. Yeah, like 27, 28 degrees Celsius. I think that's where I incubate the Stenodactylus and the Pictus geckos. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Are they one of the few skink species that lay eggs?
Actually, the majority of skink species lay eggs.
So the fact that they're live birth is the misconception.
Yeah. Yeah, all the time. And I think it's because of blueies. Blueies were so widely popularized that I think people thought that all skinks were live bearing. And the majority of skinks actually lay eggs. Like even the North American species lay eggs predominantly. So I think it's something where people were just so used to blue tongue skinks in the pet trade, and oddly enough, it's blueies that are the weird ones being live bearing.
Interesting. Do you have any plans of working with any other types of skinks?
Always. I have Peter's Banded skink. I think I've nailed down exactly how to breed them. The only problem is I don't know where to get them. They don't get imported often, and they were imported for a long time. But again, same thing with the Togos. They're from a range where right now importing them is damn near impossible. And so I just have one lone female that I know was a female because she gave me an infertile egg. And now I'm like, it's like a time crunch. I've had her for like 3-4 years. I have no idea how old she is. And I'm desperately trying to get a breeding group together for those. Same thing goes for Schneiders. I want to try to breed Schneiders. I want to try to figure out how to breed a lot of these species that are wild caught. But Schneider skinks, although they make great pets, they come in with parasites. They are all wild caught. Nobody breeds them. They're arguably much harder to take care of. So I just think that if somebody can at least figure out how to breed them, maybe we can simplify it. But it's just that hurdle of like, I'm pretty limited on space. So I gotta kind of pick my battles, unfortunately.
It's time for a 4th reptile room.
I know. I need a new house is what I need.
I feel like everyone in the hobby feels the same way. It's like, I totally would, but I need more space.
I know. We always need more space. You see these slanted ceilings here? Like I could fit, if these ceilings weren't slanted, I could have 4 more racks.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I'm getting up there as well. I'm on reptile room 2, and I have a couple of snakes in my rooms. I guess I'm almost at 3 as well. And I don't know where I'm gonna go after that. So I feel you on that. But okay, so we've covered kind of their husbandry. We've talked about their breeding. Now let's get into the morphs, which I think you have some pretty cool morphs that I think you maybe mentioned are not available anywhere else. Can you kind of talk about that?
So the cool thing about Fire Skinks is, I think more often than not, my favorite like comment is, "Oh my God, there are morphs," and I'm like, "Yeah, they're not only are they great pets, but there's freaking morphs, dude." I've founded just about every morph that exists in Fire Skinks.
Sorry, you found it as in you were the...
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I founded Hypo, True Patternless, Vanishing Pattern, Saddleback. The Extreme Red genes are ones that are polygenic, but my Extreme Red lines, are co-founded with Richard Valdez. Same thing with True Patternless. We coined True Patternless. We created the first Cobalts, which is the super form of True Patternless. So there are 2 incomplete dominant genes in Fire Skinks. One is true patternless, which is a patternless fire skink, and the super form is a almost black looking fire skink. They kind of, as they get bigger, they turn a more bronzy color. That, the first aneries, the first ghosts, which is hypo and anery. I've only ever produced one of those, and it's something we're still speculating on. I'm still investigating the hypogene and fire skinks. Because I popped out the first one in captivity 2 years ago. Unfortunately, he passed suddenly, and we're still trying to figure out like what the cause was, if it was genetic, if we got to there's a lot of this stuff is all very, very new. So all this is kind of happening within my collection, and a lot is like we're just trying to figure that out. But in 2023, I produced the first prism fire skinks, and prisms are definitely my like pride and joy. They were a 6-year project on a whim. I saw the first patternless and the first cobalt fire skinks, and I went, wow, that's awesome. And then I saw aneries, and I was like, I wonder if you can mix those. And so I did. And so it took a long time, and it took a lot of help. But we were able to create the first true patternless that was 100% heck for anery. And I bred her to a visual anery male, Bonk. So Bonk and Tika were the parents of the world's first prism fire skinks. And they got the name prism because fire skinks are inherently iridescent. That just adds to how cool they are. You shine a light on them and they shine like rainbows. They're absolutely beautiful. But the thing about patternless too, patternless tends to kind of cause more iridophore disruption. So that light refraction comes off of them even more. And then aneries have a lot of translucency to their scale that causes them to be even more iridescent. So my aneries are really, really iridescent. Patternlesses are really, really iridescent. And when these babies hatched, they looked silver because the light that was coming off of them created this rainbow effect, and they looked prismatic, and they kept that through their, through with age and everything. And I've got pictures of me kind of shining mine in a window, and you can see that light refraction going all over them, and it's gorgeous. It's nothing I've ever seen before. They've got solid black eyes and that kind of white body, and they're really beautiful. Now, the cool thing is, I just said super, like there's a super form. So that's the next step is making a cobalt anery, which will be phantoms. So I don't know if that's going to happen this year, like in the coming years, but that might be a 2026 thing. So that's really cool. But
Fascinating.
There are 4, 5. There's 7 that exist, and they're all in my room right now staring at me.
The only 7 in the world, and they're in your room.
Ever. I'm the only person that even has the ability to make them. So this is something that very much solely exists within my collection, and it is nerve-wracking as all hell, but, it's a little scary.
I'm sure it's a little scary, but how else does it feel to know that you've created a morph? And think about it like 50 years down the line, hopefully fire skinks become more popular, everyone's keeping them, everyone's captive breeding them, and there's all these morphs, and you can be the person to say, I founded all those morphs. They started in my reptile room.
It's cool. It's so freaking cool. I am still, I still feel like I'm kind of at the beginning of my journey with this species. I've been working with them for almost 10 years. But I'm still 23, I just I still feel like I'm just starting. Like, I don't know where I'm going to be with the species in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years, but having been able to found and create, they're without me and Rich really giving so much faith to these animals that nobody else gave them. The first anery fire skinks, I guarantee you they would have gone to somebody that had the money, and they would have died. They probably would have never gotten bred. They would have never been produced, and we would not have these animals in captivity. And because of those initial, investments in projects, I'm able to produce aneries every year. I'm able to, there's only probably about 30 aneries that exist. Still, they're very, very rare. But even this year, I only produced one, but it sold like that, and being able to, I guess, propagate the species, being able to keep these morphs going and see them go to other places and potentially get bred, and like seeing my lines and like knowing, like every time I see an Avery Fire Skink, I'm like, I made that, like I made that happen, and like Rich made that happen, and like it's so cool. It's an unreal feeling. It really is. And I appreciate especially everybody that's come to support me over the years and everything. They have no idea like how awesome it feels and how appreciative I am for it. And I talk about it all the time behind closed doors. Just like how I mean, I wouldn't be able to keep doing this if it wasn't for the people that thought they were as cool as I do, So I'm just glad to be given an avenue to talk about them, really. So thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on and talking about them. Like what a unique species, what a unique story. And I think we need more, like you would be considered the pioneer of fire skinks. I think we need more people taking on specific species and kind of pioneering them in captivity. So what you're doing is awesome.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of species that it's like if you think a species is cool and you think to yourself, man, I really love this species, but I wish more people bred them. Bruh, if you think it's cool and you think you know how to breed them, take that step, and you could be you'll be in the same position, and you get to like save the species. It's like if you want a species to be popular, if you want a species to get the recognition that you think it deserves, scream it. Like you need to be a voice. You need to talk about it. You need to post about it, because there are enough freaking ball pythons and crested geckos and corn snakes, like there are so many cool species, and there are so many amazing and unique and wonderful species. And I think all it takes is somebody not listening to the naysayers, not listening to people that are like, good luck trying to breed that thing, and just being like, you know what? Screw you. I'm going to still try to figure out how to breed it. Because if I listened to them and I was like, I'm not going to try, none of this would have happened.
There would be no aneries, there would be no prisms, there would be
Nothing. There wouldn't be hypos. There wouldn't be saddlebacks. There wouldn't be my extreme red lines. There wouldn't be like vanishing pattern. I think we have like 7 or 8 morphs. I'd have to like write them all down. But, there are unfortunately 3 forms of patternless in fire skinks, and it makes everybody like lose their mind because true patternless is incomplete dominant. Vanishing pattern is recessive. And then faux patternless is line bred. So it's just reduced pattern, and people try to pass them off as true patternlesses all the time. But it's just breeding reduced pattern to reduced pattern, getting less pattern on an animal. And that can happen just from line breeding as opposed to being its own separate gene. And the way that you differentiate it is true patternless individuals. I actually have it pinned on my Instagram if anyone wants to go there and look at it. I have a morph identification thing. But true patternless individuals hatch with a tail stripe. So they actually have a solid black line that goes from their back down to the tip of their tail. And I'm sure I'll get the question of, oh, well, what about adults? Adults have an airbrushed kind of looking neck pattern. Normals will have this kind of jagged, yeah. So that's anery versus normal. And then there's one right up below it that's pinned. That's the tail differences. You can see it there. So that's an individual that is true patternless, but actually still has phantom striping, and they lose that with age sometimes. But yeah.
Do they always have blue tails? I don't think is that a
Yeah.
morph?
Yeah, they hatch with blue tails. And funny enough, hypos keep the blue tail. It's something that I'm investigating further, but the hypo fire skinks that have hatched keep a kind of silvery blue tail. Unfortunately, there are only like 2 that even exist right now. So I'm trying to nail that down. I think that I have a prism that is also a hypo, because the hypos actually originated from my anery line. It's kind of at random. I have aneries that have solid black, like you would expect them to be black and white. And then my male is actually gray and white. And so it was shocking to get babies that were so high contrast. And so I believe hypo to be an incomplete dominant gene. I've not bred hypo to hypo yet. So there could be a super form or something, but it has kind of acted incomplete dominant that's coming from my male. So again, there's a lot of breeding and experiments. You know, it's just a space, time, and money thing.
Yeah, I'm going through your Instagram right now. These are some gorgeous animals.
Thank you.
That's the prism?
Yeah, that's a baby prism. You can see the iridescence on it. I have that same baby behind me. She's staring at me right now.
Is she? Could you want to grab her?
Here she is.
Oh wow! And look at her. She's just sitting in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
Graphite.
pretty. Is
Her name
that
is-
that?
Her name is Graphite.
Okay.
No,
Is
thanks. All right.
there you go. Now you have a crown, a skink crown. Her tail is very long. Does that mean she's Cameroon or like how?
No, she's a Togo. Funny enough. It's just like it's a random thing. Togos, Cameroons actually have even longer tails. Crazy enough.
Wow. Is this about? That's a juvenile, not an adult.
She's a subadult, so she could breed this year, but I like them to be a little bit bigger. I have like they are not very far off from adult size. Oh, girl, what are you doing? Hi.
That is awesome. And you mentioned like genetic testing. Are you doing that?
I would like to. It's something that I wonder if you can see the iridescence on her. A little bit. It's kind
Kind
of
of a little bit, yeah.
yeah, a little bit of those rainbows by her butt there. But what? What? I have a non-Avery version over here too.
So that's the anery version.
Yeah, that's the Avery version. And then hi bud. And then this is Menace. This is the non-Anery version. So
Of the prism?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he's 100% het though. You know, he's a sibling, but you can see that red sides. This is what I was talking about with the fading pattern along their neckline, as opposed to a normal. They have this kind of airbrushed look to them. Menace, what are you doing, buddy? Anyway.
So cool.
He sired some babies this year, actually.
Cool. How many, like, on average, I'm sure you don't count, but like how many clutches on average do you get a season? Like how many pairs are you pairing?
It depends, if I'm being honest. I had a couple girls slug out this year, tried a new male, and you know. But generally speaking, this year was a slow year for me, kind of on purpose. I had a lot of other stuff going on. But generally speaking, I produce anywhere from 6 to 10 clutches a year. I try to keep it kind of small, because that's just what I'm comfortable with right now. Next year, all the prisms are breeding though, so get ready. And by get ready, I mean me, because I don't know what I'm gonna do with all those. But another rack, right? Just put it somewhere, middle of the room, I guess.
Yeah, why not? Is there a community around them? Are people like when you're producing babies, are people buying babies? Do you
Immediately.
vent expos immediately? Okay.
I don't even get to vend expos. I sell out as soon as I post them. As like, and that's not like a hey, look at me thing. It's just like it stresses me out, like, because I'll have something that I'm like, I'm gonna hold this one back. You know, you're cool, and then somebody's like, take my money, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm poor. You know, like, you know. And honestly, they're especially with the help of like people that have like reposted and like, you know, really kind of brought attention to my account with Skinks Inc. Like, it's really created like a really great like following and community, and it's like there has been so much more interest in this species than I've ever seen before. And It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. I love talking about them. I will yap about fire skinks as long as you let me. Um, and yeah, the only thing that like I run into is I post that I just have an annuity. Somebody's like, "Is it for sale?" And I'm like, "I guess now it is." You know.
So very hard to hold things back. Is there like what's exciting you the most about the potential future morphs? Do you think we'll see as much diversity as like leopard geckos and ball pythons within like the fire skink world?
Um, I think because fire skinks have such variability, there's so much that you can line breed for, and you're not investing a ton of time into raising them. Females mature around 3 years old, males mature around 2 years old. So at most you're going to be waiting like 3 years, 3 to 4 years for females, which generally speaking is pretty similar to like other species. Like, you know, some mature faster than others, but um I think line breeding is something that a lot of people will be able to do easily. I've seen, you know, you could line breed for melanistic looking skinks. You could line breed for more white on them. You could line breed for more red on them, you know, and it just depends on what you're starting with, you know. I think it's becoming harder because not as many are being imported and because of the risk with the Cameroons and stuff. But I hope that at least in my lines, I see so much diversity already in babies. There's a gene that Rich founded called Pixie. It's like a pixelated pattern. They're a derivative off of Cameroons initially. They were a Cameroon X like Togo cross, and they came out with this like etch a sketch looking look. Like it looked like you took a normal fire skink and just shook it in an etch a sketch, and they have like polka dots all over them instead of having lines, and it's really cool. He produces those like every year, I think. I think I only even have one, and it's not even that good of a quality one.
Are there any like all black fire skinks?
Soon. Soon.
That might be what gets me into them.
Because the thing about the super form of Prism, which will be the Phantoms, is Cobalt Fire Skinks. I posted one on my page, like farther down somewhere. And where the heck? Maybe I have a picture of it. But I did post a Cobalt farther down my page. Her name is Violet. And essentially what we're going to be doing is crossing that Cobalt into Anery and hopefully making some Cobalts with the Anery. And what that should do is create a very high iridescent animal with just jet black body, because it's taking out all that orange pigment and stuff. And the thing about Cobalts too is they paradox a lot. So there is a potential to line breed that even with Cobalts as long as I make enough of them, which unfortunately I haven't produced them yet, and it's you know, but anyway. So I'm hoping that in the future we see some more you know, like solid black fire skinks, because we have the white with the prisms, and I'm hoping to take that into the fire skinks, into the, you know, cobalts. But it's a in due time type of thing. I don't really know yet. And I guess, you know, it's just something we'll have to see. This is Violet. I don't have a picture of like her whole body, I don't think, but you can see that she's got that gold pack and her side is black.
And what is that morph called? Sorry?
This is Cobalt. So
That's the Cobalt. Okay.
This is the super form of the true patternless. So this is the super form of, you know, that male I just showed you with the orange and the yellow. That's
This
if you breed
you
breed
go.
two of those together.
I think that shows better like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Very interesting. Sorry to just jump in here quickly. So the prism is like kind of getting it more and more white. How long did it take from when you kind of had did you even have the idea, or was it a surprise? And then if you had kind of I want to do this, how long did it take? Like how many years or whatever of breeding till you kind of got there? 7? Wow.
Yeah, it's 7. I know, because that's nailed in my head. I remember, like, I was like, when I bred them together, I was like, this is gonna go one of two ways. I'm either gonna prove that, because that was when I proved true pet, because so true patternlesses were initially imported by, Mike Schultz, and cobalts were named by him. I didn't coin that morph, but was the first person to like propagate them, I guess, or to breed them in captivity. And I just kept it, but here's a male. This is no. Anyway, this is the male, and you can see he has these orange spots kind of next to hit, like on his side. You can see the whole body's that kind of black color, and I'm hoping that we can kind of take that yellow out and make it a whole solid kind of. But yeah, it took me about 7 years with the prisms, and it was an idea that I had when I first saw the imported animals. I was like, I need to figure out those genes, and I need to make something that's both. So I named them, I named them kind of on the spot when they hatched, but like I will never forget that moment. I had this like little thing on my finger, and I was like, you have been almost a decade of my life,
Yeah, I'm sure it's a crazy feeling. And then like so it took you 7 years to get up to this point. What is you mentioned you want to create supers and phantoms and all kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Do you think that now that you've gotten this far, it will be easier to get to the next one?
Yeah. Um, it's like yes and no. Last year I got hit with some tragedy because I would be a little bit farther ahead. But I had an incubator failure that killed everything last year. It sucked. I had everything in my incubator at the same time, and the heating broke, and it actually froze my eggs. It froze them solid. And that was Oh, that sucked. That sucked so bad. So this year I'm trying to play catch up. I did some very specific pairings, you know, but next year should be the first hypo to hypo pairing, the first patternless to patternless, the first patternless to prism, So next year is going to be a really exciting one, and one that I am knocking on every piece of wood I can find, that we, go without issue, and that we can actually see some of these really cool morphs in captivity, because I'm hoping to make, hypo patternless, potentially figure out if hypo is incomplete dominant, things like that. All these animals are starting to get to that age where it's like, this is the year that, like, those I just showed you, that's my sub-adult. She's going to be ready next spring. So it's like, fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Um, are the babies hard to raise?
No,
No.
no, not at all. No, they're tiny. They are, you know, they're quite small. And I can probably show you one. Let me grab a glove.
Yeah.
Um, they're pretty small. Got some patternless babies in here right now. Hey guys, what are you doing? Hi. These are little babies. This is a little baby patternless.
Will they keep
And
that color and like the intensity?
so these babies are actually from my extreme red female. So one of my very, very best extreme reds, I paired her to a patternless ex-Cameroon male. And he looks really cool. So these guys have some of that shattered, variation to them. I've got some that have solid red backs. I've got some really cool, there's some really cool genetic stuff going on with these guys right now. And I am beyond excited to see them grow up.
Yeah, all the animals you've showed me so far are absolutely gorgeous, but I think that was my favorite one.
We got a baby prism over here. If I can dig her up. Hi, my love.
Wow, I changed my mind. This is my favorite one.
Yeah. She's pretty cool.
Yeah, the spotting on her sides is incredible as well.
They keep that a lot of the time. Hey, ma'am, go back in there. Thank you. But yeah, so
Wait,
I
sorry.
joke.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, I joke about it being a female, but I don't know. It's just because I've never produced a male prism, and it's been driving me crazy.
Do, so that was a prism, and the one you showed us earlier was also a prism?
No, it was a patternless. So that other one, oh wait, the big one, right?
Yes.
The big one was a prism. Yeah, that was graphite. They have a lot of variability. That's why I believe there to be hypo kind of influence summer, because I've got some prisms that are really light that have almost no black at all, and then I've got some that have higher contrast. I've got some like that where they have all that spotting. I have an adult that has kept that spotting. Her name is Prism because she was the first one to hatch. How creative am I? But anyway, yeah, so they have a lot of variability. I think fire skinks in general have a lot of variability. But yeah.
Fascinating. Fascinating. I'm glad Bree recommended you and set this up because this was a very, very interesting episode, and I probably would have continued to just not. I was gonna say disregard fire skinks at expos, but that's the wrong word. I just kind of look at them and like cool and move
They,
on. But now I might kind of like take a deeper look at them.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's worth, obviously it's you gotta, it's annoying, starting off with wild caught animals, but I do think that it's always worth at least giving it a shot at breeding, because once you get the wild caught animals, if you can at least get them to that point where you have eggs, you're good. You can then have CVB animals. You'd probably have to do it again for strengthening lines, bloodlines, raising up those babies. That's what I did. I'd start with wild caught animals. My wild caught original stock are actually in my living room. They're in a different room. But it's just about kind of getting that foot in the door, because again, you don't know how old they are. You don't know if they've got something else going on. So it's better to just try to breed them. Once you do, then you've got babies and you've got much better chances of really healthy individuals. So that's why like I always encourage breeding. And like if anyone has questions about breeding fire skinks, message me. Because like I'm not going to gatekeep at all. The more people that I can get working with this species, the absolute better. I don't want them to stay a niche thing. I want them to be kept. I want people to, you know, appreciate them for more than just a throwaway species or just a pretty expo pet that you get that lives for 6 months, because they deserve a lot more than that. I mean, they're wonderful, wonderful animals.
Yeah, it's awesome to see somebody so passionate about a specific species. It's very cool to see, and this is probably this is perfect. You kind of led us into kind of closing this down. You said people can message you. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Skinks Inc. or at Aves of the Apes. I use both. Apes of the Apes is my main account. That's just like my personal account. Skinks Inc. is more business related, so it's probably the best way to message me about fire skinks in general. You can email me at skinksinc.cbb@gmail.com. I do get emails, every now and again. And I can send my care guide. I can talk to people about really anything they want to talk to me about. And if anybody wants to talk about biosecurity, whatever, like, go ahead. I don't mind people bugging me. I really don't.
Awesome. And all of those, I just took a note of what time so I can make sure all of those things will be in the description. So yeah, follow Avery on both of her accounts. Send her an email. If you guys are looking to get into fire skinks, we have the Pioneer Fire Skinks here. So make it happen. And sort of on that note, for future breeders, for like, where do you see the fire skink hobby, if it's a hobby on its own? Like, where do you see fire skinks going in the hobby in the future? And what advice do you have for any potential future fire skink owners?
I see fire skinks, if they are given the chance, being as pretty freaking close to as popular as blue tongue skinks are. I can't say leopard geckos and stuff like that just because leopard geckos are like pet rocks. They're pretty foolproof. It's hard to kill a leopard gecko. Fire skinks, a little bit more touchy because of the humidity requirement, but generally speaking, they're pretty easy to keep. The best advice I can give to fire skink owners and people getting into fire skinks, is patience. This is a highly intelligent species. They're as intelligent as an Ackie monitor. They are easily trained, but you have to give them the opportunity to settle down and to be comfortable with you first. I work with my babies every day, and so by the time the people that buy babies from me get their baby, it's pretty well socialized. You know, they're used to people. If you're getting a wild caught animal, or even if you're getting a CBB one from somebody that is outside of me, I can't guarantee that that animal has been interacting with me that much. So give it time. And if you're ever concerned that your fire skink like is hiding more or something, don't be afraid to, once it's settled in and stuff, bribe them with food and dig them up every once in a while. But be gentle with them, you know, sit with them, don't squeeze them, you know, you want to be able to give them. I mean, you kind of saw how I was holding mine. I let her just kind of do her thing on my hand. I don't hold her tight, you know, because they're very sensitive to stuff like that. But as long as you take your time with them, you are going to have your favorite pet lizard for the next 15 years. And I think it's worth just not being like, oh my God, it hates me. These things are terrible. It's like, no. It's just like, again, the feral raccoon comment. It's like, don't go, you know, you wouldn't expect a feral cat to be used to you right away. Give it some time, give it some patience, bribe it with food, and that animal is going to start to recognize you. And then you're on a roll, you know, but it's just about patience. That's like number one above everything else is patience.
That is awesome advice for, I think, any reptile, not just a fire skink. And I don't think anyone's ever given me that answer before. Patience is, what is that saying? Patience is a virtue. Be patient, people. No, I love that. I love that answer. I love that advice. Avery, thank you very, very much for coming on and teaching us about the awesome world of fire skinks. Maybe once, you know, you've got a couple more morphs under your belt, once the 2026 season is kind of coming to a wrap and you find out what you get, maybe you can come back and kind of tell us a little more
Oh,
about
yeah.
some other cooler morphs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Love to talk about it. Like, especially as I start to learn more about these morphs and stuff, I'll have a lot more information to give about what like the breakdown is genetically and what I figured out so far. And I'll make a list first so that I'm prepared.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Avery, once again, thank you very much for coming on. And everyone else, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Alrighty, thank you.